I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, working all day long, and then tutoring at night. And I just said, I don't want my life to be like this. I don't. I got to figure it out. So I went to the school library, junior high school library. I started just picking up like how people make money, and everything was pointing to entrepreneurs. And so I just started down that route and just started testing and trying. And I started in my own home with sweats, nursing a baby, like literally nursing a baby, typing one-handed when I put some of trash, like stuff that was headed to the trash can, up online and sold it for my very first time. And it was at that moment I had made my first, it was either $200 to $300. I don't remember the exact number. That I'd realized that I had tapped into something that I could control.
What's up, ladies, and welcome to another episode of the Millionaire Girls Club podcast. I am so excited about my guest today. So here's the thing. She was once a teacher, making less than 30 grand a year. And she left that career to stay at home with her babies, her 4 babies, which is essentially like 1,000 babies. But while doing that, she had an inkling to do more, something that would contribute to her family financially, something that would call her to the next level. And so she started listing random things that she found around her house on her own e-com store, right? And slowly but surely, she started gaining momentum, but it doesn't stop there. She took that momentum and built that business into multi-million dollars in revenue. And then she took another blog to multi-million dollars in revenue. And then she started a third business and took that one to millions, and finally found her way to starting the Because I Can movement, which is now her 4th multi-million dollar business, where she helps people start e-commerce businesses that change their families' lives. She's built an insane community, has a chart-topping podcast, has spoken on stages like Funnel Hacking Live, is the ultimate hype woman, and one of my closest, dearest friends. Chicks, please give it up for the powerhouse that is Alison Prince. Hi, friends. I'm so excited that we're finally doing this. Thank you so much for being here with me. This is going to be such a good conversation. If it's anything like our hill hikes, I'm just like so excited for what's to come.
I know. I'm so excited. And thanks for that intro. That made me feel like a rock star.
When normally, I was telling you today on our walk, I'm like, no, I'm going to do it like late night show style.
I loved it. Yeah, it dresses up the sweats that I'm usually wearing at home.
We're going to get into all these like little like niggling things you say. Okay. First though, before we get into, just another round of therapy with Jill and Alison.
Right.
Take us back, right? Like take us back, because I mentioned in my intro that you started off as a teacher, making less than 30 grand a year.
$28,000.
$28,000. How the heck did you go from $28,000 a year to 4 multi-million dollar businesses? Fill me in on that.
All right. So all through life, you're told, go to school, get a degree, you'll have financial security. So I did that. Then I got my first degree. Then I got my first paycheck, or my degree in teaching. I taught for a month, got my first paycheck, and they handed it to me and they said, here you go. And you also qualify for government assistance. And I was like, wait a second. Financial security and government assistance don't go in the same sentence. I can't even afford my own food. Like I didn't understand that concept. And it was such a realization that everything that I had been taught in school didn't really prepare me for becoming an adult, for adulting. And at that time I had a new baby, I was married, and I came home and I showed my husband, he was going to school full time. And I'm like, look at my paycheck. How are we going to even afford toilet paper? Like, what are we going to do? Because I mean, before we were using student loans and, we were able to manage things, but then going into the real world, it's all on you. And so I started another job at night. I started tutoring, and I remember being so exhausted. I had a newborn baby. I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, working all day long, and then tutoring at night. And I just said, I don't want my life to be like this. I don't. I got to figure it out. So I went to the school library, junior high school library. I didn't even have a phone. I started just picking up like how people make money, and everything was pointing to entrepreneurs. people that could pay for their house in full, people that could pay for cars, people that could pay for toilet paper. They own businesses. And so I just started down that route and just started testing and trying and what works for me and what works for, I mean, fast forward, I have 4 kids. It's not like I could go and start like a brick and mortar. That didn't make sense to me. And so I started in my own home with sweats, nursing a baby, like literally nursing a baby, typing one-handed when I put some of trash, like stuff that was headed to the trash can, up online and sold it for my very first time. And it was at that moment I had made my first, it was either $200 to $300. I don't remember the exact number, that I'd realized that I had tapped into something that I could control. I didn't have a boss telling me that I could make money. I made $200 to $300 and it felt like I'd won the lottery. And I'm like, yes, I did it. I did it. And then the second and third day, didn't sell anything and almost walked away from it. And then the third day that night, I just had this feeling. I believe it was God yelling at me, whispering in my and said, Alison, I just showed you that this is possible. How dare you quit? You can't quit. And it was so impactful to me at that moment that I turned to Jared and I'm like, did you hear that? Oh my gosh, did you hear that? And he's like, what are you talking about? And so I knew that that was the door that I needed to step through and I needed to be fully committed to it. And I did. And has it been scary? Yeah. Has it been hard? Yeah. Have I been nervous? Have I sweated in all the wrong places because I don't know what I'm doing? All the time. But I've gotten used to being uncomfortable, and living in the uncomfortable has allowed me to build 4 multi-million-dollar businesses with zero. I have not taken a formal business class ever. I took math and science. That's it.
I'm impressed you even made it through those subjects. I didn't make it through those subjects. So props to you. And I'm just so happy you're finally like sharing the story in all its glory I said to you before as we were starting to talk about having you on the show, and like, I said, like, can I really push the boundaries with like what we talk about here? Because, we've had so many conversations where I've been like, you minimize your story and you're such a savage entrepreneur in the best possible way. You're so smart. You're so driven. You're so empathetic. You're so switched on. And so I love seeing you stepping out into sharing that story with pride and like confidence, and just like mad props to that.
It's taken me a long time to do that.
Because you kind of had like a fear of bragging, right? Like what's that?
I still do.
Is it fear of bragging, or is it like fear of success?
And then that's why I
think you have a fear of success. Actually, you are successful AF.
Yeah, I don't think I'm afraid of success. I'm afraid of having other people think that I'm non-relatable, because to me, I'm the mom at home who gets my kids snacks, who is wearing sweats, but also happens to own 4 multi-million-dollar businesses. And as soon as they hear that, they're like, oh, too much. I can't relate to that. And I'm like, but no, I'm just like you. You may be an expert in baking bread or fashion. I am the worst at baking and the worst at fashion, right? And so it's me trying to figure out how to relate to people to say, look, we all start in very similar paths, right? We want to do something. We have this dream deep down inside of us that we can do more. And part of my dream was, we can put food on our table, but could we even afford to put food on other people's table? Like, I wanted to be able to give back and give more. And I think there's so many people that want to do that. And I want to inspire them to know that they don't have to be like crazy brilliant or crazy successful. Like, the humblest beginnings is the exact place where you need to start to do these crazy, amazing, mind-moving things that you never even thought was possible. And I think it's, if I start off my story with, look at what I've done, people will just shut me down. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk about that. Maybe just talk about the trash that I sold. That seems to be more relatable. And then I don't tell the other stories. I'll stop.
Well, and I'm all for like being relatable, of course. But do you inspire by like minimizing all the accomplishments? Like I know you're stepping out into like sharing that more proudly and in a big way, but like I've heard you so many times be like, I sell cupcake liners. And I'm like, no, you don't. You do not sell cupcake liners. You change lives. And you and I have had so many conversations about that. So like, where do you think that really comes from? Because you and I were having a good convo today on our hike. And I don't want to like make you uncomfortable with all the questions I'm going to ask, but I really feel like this serves women because I think a lot of women are like, oh, if I talk about myself with confidence, and we can talk about the thing when you're like, I don't want to look like I'm bragging. And I'm like, what do I say to you?
Which time? You say a lot of things.
It ain't bragging if it's true. You're not bragging, right? I just don't think like playing small inspires change.
Well, I think I stopped my story. So I will be like, I sold cupcake liners and then stop my story. And I don't say I sold cupcake liners and in one day sold over $20,000.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid that people will be like, 20 in a day? What? I don't understand that. And so, and what you say all the time, like it's not bragging if it's truth. I have to remember that. And then I also have to, a guy named Myron Golden said, if you got this gift, if someone gave you a gift, what would you do? And I'm like, I say thank you. And he's like, yeah, God gave you this gift of opportunity, the gift of uncomfortableness so you can move forward. Just give him thanks. And then it's not bragging. And so as I'm learning how to lean into that and not hiding it, and saying, yeah, I sold $20,000 in cupcake liners in one day. And I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity and now I get to tell you how to do it. It's helping me come out of my shell a little bit instead of reserving it all. And it helps me to take away the, oh my gosh, I'm going to be cocky. Or maybe braggy about it, but it brings it back to the what Kathy Heller says all the time: "Come with me," instead of "Oh, just watch me." No, don't watch me. Let's do it together. Come with me. Let's do this together. Look at what I've done. Let me show you how to do it, so you can do it as well.
What about Katie and her candles? Like, do you think she would have been as jazzed up and like stuck it out the way she has? And this is one of Alison's success stories. So I'm just like queuing it up because I know like all the details of Alison's life.
This one's, my goodness.
But do you think she would have been like, oh, cool, I can like make $100? Or was she like, oh, Alison's up to big things. That's who I want to learn from because I want to do big things.
Yeah. And I have to, so let me go back and tell you, Katie was, or is still one of my students. She started a year and a half ago and she wanted to sell lingerie. And it just wasn't like, something was off. Have you ever tried to sell something that just fell off?
Yes.
Yeah, we all have, right? And so then she started into these journals and it still wasn't it. And I was like, hey, Katie, can I just show you how to find trending products a little bit better? And she said, yeah. So I showed her. She took some of those products and went out there, chose this home decor. It was me, these home decor pieces, and launched it right around when COVID hit. So she's got all this fear. Oh my gosh, why am I starting an e-commerce business? And I'm like, just keep going. Just keep going. Trust me, keep going. She did.
This is our year.
And this November, 2020, she hit just under $1 million month. Not in total sales,
so cool.
In a month. Why? It's because she leaned into it. She got uncomfortable. But yes, I do agree. And when I go out there, I see other people selling courses on how to do e-commerce, how to set up your online store. And I do a little bit of research on them and they've made like $20,000. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm so proud of them for starting, but they haven't been through an entire decade of, we've gone through swine flu. We've never done a pandemic. We've gone through tariffs.
Remember when we had it just as good as swine flu?
Seriously. And there's so much more to the e-commerce space. And so when I do hold back, I think I do a disservice to people because I'm like, hey, I've gone through this for 10 years. We've gone through so many Facebook algorithm changes. We've gone through new platforms. Should you be spending time on TikTok or the new thing out there? Should you just be chasing the glitter everywhere? And when these people are like, hey, I just started, I made $20,000. Let me teach you how to do it. I'm like, you don't have the experience yet to teach. Keep growing your e-commerce business, get your numbers better, get more experience under your belt, and then you're going to become a fantastic teacher. Go for it. And so I've seen people go to these people that are trying to teach, which they've got to start somewhere, and I'm super proud of them.
Yeah.
But that person doesn't have enough experience to teach them the correct way to go.
That's why they come to you.
A lot of people get stuck there, and I'm like, oh.
But that's why I love what you're building, because you do it with such integrity and heart. So that's why, I mean, I've said this to you so many times, but our friendship is like one of the best things to come out of 2020 for me, hands down. When you and I met in Puerto Rico in like February, which feels like it was literally 7 years ago. It's just like you introduced yourself and I was like, who the F is this? I want to be friends with her. And I was leaving like a few days later and I was like, no. So I was just, the way you show up and the way you serve your people and the way you bring your full heart, I respect that in such a massive way. And just also, I love where you're kind of going in 2021 with like working less, but doing better. You know what I mean? Like doing less better is kind of what I'm saying there. Like that's your true intention for 2021. So how are you structuring that in your business? Like I know, can you break that down? Like you've got big goals. We don't have to talk about them if you don't feel comfortable with that, but you've got big goals, which I'm a million. You're like, I need a few more hill hikes before I will share my goals. But how are you structuring that to make sure that you hit those goals, right? Because you are stretching yourself. You do want to make more than you did in 2020, but you want to work 3 days a week. So what does that process look like? What pieces do you have in place? What automation, sales, all of that kind of stuff? Break it down.
Well, I think 2020 was a big eye opener for me of what I love to do and what I didn't love to do as a person. And I think it was such a blessing for me to give me a chance to sit back and say, all right, what is really moving the needle, not only in my business, but other people's business as well? Is it doing all of the everythings, or is it really dialing down on the stuff that I'm good at? Because I have other people say, Alison, why don't you teach a class on affiliate marketing and blogging and how to speak on stage? And I'm like, let me just focus on what I'm really good at instead of kind of good at everything else. You know what I mean? Like, let me just pick one thing and dive down deep into it. And I found that when I do that, there's more clarity and I'm not as busy. And so 2020, yes, I was busy. I went through so much growth and so much learning. And that's why I think 2020 was so grand. We were talking about it this morning about 2020 was a huge trial for everyone. And I fought through it. And a huge opportunity for e-commerce arose and we stepped up to it. And we said, let me help you get your brick and mortar going so you don't lose your shirt. Like, let's do this. And then all the e-commerce stores that are like, oh my gosh, we're dying during fourth quarter. There's so many orders. I'm like, great, let's talk about strategy. And also let's talk about sleep. Are you sleeping? If you're not sleeping, you're not going to perform very well. Let's do this. And so anyway, going into 2021, I've really dialed down on what is working, like what moves the needle for my clients. And that's being there for them, showing up live with them. Not all the integration and the automation and all that stuff. I mean, that's great, but it takes a lot of time to set up versus if I just come and say, hey, I'm here for you. Let's do this right now. All right, go ahead, open up this window and click here. All right, great. Now you have this. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to do this. And then I walk them through step by step. I'm getting massive results for my people and it's less stress on me because I'm not trying to fiddle the HTML code or link this to that and this to this. And then I'm not a tech person and that frustrates me. And then I go down YouTube University and I'm stuck there for 15 hours, but it really is just showing up for my people and saying, how can I serve you? And limiting my time to where, no, it's not going to be every single day, but I'm going to run these trainings on my time schedule. And then I'm going to put more effort and energy into getting more people into it. And so it's not like a little year round. It's like massive chunks
Influxes
throughout the year.
Yeah. And like, what was some of the, like the triggers or the beliefs and stuff that you had to unwind to be like, no, I can hit my goals and set this boundary. Like I can do less better. I can have more time off and still make more money. Like what was some of the stuff that came up for you as you were setting that intention? Because I know it's a real big deal to you. And I know in the past you've considered yourself like quite a worker, right? Like this hard charging, driven chick who wants to do big things. So how do you go from identifying as that to then being like, okay, that was great for the first 10 years. And now I'm going to do the opposite. What kind of stuff did you have to unwind or peel away or
a whole bunch. I think our whole lives were taught be busy, and busy is like this badge of honor, right?
Truth.
The busiest mom who's in the PTA and the bake sales and Pinterest birthday parties. Like for some reason we have given that a badge of honor and like, you're so busy. You're so great. You do everything. No.
And she's like, yeah, thanks.
She hasn't slept for a week. No. So there's one book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And then another one I was reading, Charlie Munger, where he and Warren Buffett will sit and listen or just think for hours. And they don't put a whole bunch on their schedule. They just need space for thinking. And I was like, that is cool. If they're some of the richest people in the world, what if I'm doing too much and not thinking enough? And so that started to sit in. And then I started down the Brooke Castillo route where she works 3 days a week.
Yeah. And
she's doing 30 million a year. And I was like, I think working too much is preventing me from growing because I'm not thinking of the systems. I'm not thinking I'm working too much in the business
and not on the business.
Yeah.
And it's almost like lazy thinking to operate that way. Right?
It's an adjustment. When I started doing it, Jill, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I should be busy. It was this weird feeling that I wasn't working. And I'm like, no, I am working. This is my thinking time. And so I had to give myself permission to, I don't know, be a little bit anxious around it and be like, you're going to feel anxious when your calendar is blocked out for you to do nothing but thinking because your calendar has been so packed. And now you've got this space to just think. And then I kept wanting to sneak back in here, play on my computer, research something. I'm like, no. Get outside, go for a walk, and just think. And it really was a huge mind shift for me to be able to do that, which is so, I don't know. It's so weird to think about.
I actually think it's like as you get to a certain level, like it's the best thing you could do for your business is to just like, I call them think-a-tates. Well, I don't call them that. Tom Bilyeu created that name, but I'm like, that's exactly what I do. I don't meditate. I think-a-tate. I think things through and I sit with my thoughts. But it gives me so much space. And I totally agree with what you're talking about. I think that's how I gave myself the permission to even start this brand is like, I gave myself mental white space to get quiet.
Yes. And I think through the quiet, you have to learn to be okay with quiet. And especially with 4 kids, I have kids constantly yelling.
There's no quiet.
There's no such thing. And so to sit with quiet is so uncomfortable and it's not natural. And we have to train our brains when we start thinking, I got to do this. No, stop, get it out. This is time for you to do nothing. And it's a learned process. I mean, because when we have babies, we automatically go into multitask mode because that's survival. We have to. Like we got a baby on the hip, we're cooking on the stove, we're pulling out the laundry with our toes, right? It's all survival. And then we think that has to go into our businesses. And maybe at the beginning it does, but then as we start to grow, that's the thing that's going to kill our businesses.
Yes, it's a bottleneck.
It is. 100%. It is. But we have to unlearn it.
It's Marissa Peer talks about this in a big way, making the unfamiliar familiar. So that's kind of like what you're doing with working less, right? You're like doing less to amplify or giving yourself more space to amplify, to go bigger by like minimizing how much you're doing. Like I just keep coming back to doing less better, but making the unfamiliar familiar, like working less is unfamiliar, because you're right. Like we think, well, in order to go bigger, I have to work harder, but it couldn't be further from the truth. And so making that unfamiliar notion, i.e., if I work less, I'll be able to make more or create more impact. Mm-hmm. We're making that familiar. And that's where things start to change. And you step into this like new version of yourself who's like, of course I work less, because the less I work, the more I make. And I remember when I was starting out, or Josh and I were starting out with the Screw, and I was listening to this chick talk about that. The less you do, the more you make. And I was like, shut up. Like, that's so not true. And now I'm like, I know. I take everything back. I take it all back. You were the wisest.
It is such a mind shift to do that.
100%. I feel like that's growth in business, is like stepping into new identities all the time, just like stepping into the next level version of yourself. And when you say like, I sit in the uncomfortable in order to create all this stuff, like that's where the magic happens, is outside of your comfort zone. Like that stuff doesn't happen in your comfort zone.
And in the thinking, it's not like it's just this blank space of like nothing. I'm thinking about, all right, for instance, I'm hiring a copywriter right now. What are the systems that I need to put in place? Because I know right now where my biggest bottlenecks are. They come from me as the business owner. I know I've got to write 15 emails, and I'm like, I don't want to do that today. Let's do it tomorrow. Yes. But if I hire someone who knows that that's their job and it's their livelihood, they're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. And so if I can put a structure in place, she's going to get the work done that I will be putting off, that I know I should be doing. And I think that gives me permission to say, okay, here's what needs to be done. Now go do it. Then it's the next thing. Okay, what can I step into? What needs to be grown? Okay, let's make sure all the social media is done. Then I go talk to my social media person. Okay, we need to make sure all this is lined up. And then she goes and executes. Because what's my job? My job is to make money for the business. That's what business owners do. It is to make money. That's what a business is. And if I'm doing some peduncle work in the background that doesn't create revenue, I mean, yes, it still needs to be done, but that's not where the business is going to survive. The business survives with the CEO, with the owner stepping into how do we create revenue? How do we serve our people? And really, like when I say making money, some people are like, you're just greedy. No, because when you serve people, the money comes.
And right? I would hope that anyone listening to this in MGC would never think that, because we know that like money isn't greedy. Like that's just shitty past conditioning, right? Like that's not even a fact. So I can't imagine anyone here is actually thinking that you're greedy because you want to make money. We're all like, go do you, friend. So on the topic of money. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and really how cool is it is when you hire an amazing staff and then you give them bonuses based on performance.
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Generosity is like one of my core values. It's my favorite thing.
Yes. And then you see what they do with the money. And I had a gal, she went and she bought a boat so that she could spend more time with her family.
That's cool.
This was over some time. She had saved and she bought a boat. And she's like, Alison, I have the best memories with my family on that boat. And I'm like, yes, this business provided her to build stronger relationships with her family. And what is the core? Families are the core. Relationships are the core of human beings. And that was just such a good feeling that I said, okay, here's the job. Now, this is what needs to be done. Like, this is the minimum. If you do this to hit the maximum, I'm going to write you a check. And she was like, let me at it. Let me at it.
Move out of the way.
Yep. And she was doing it, what needed to be done. And then I was able to focus on other things that only I could focus on.
And I think that's so important when you, even talking about a copywriter, like, because the sweetest thing I ever did in the Screw was hire out copy, because I had written for so long. I think I've written, with how many words I've written, I've probably written at least 4 novels. Like I wrote for like 7 years for the Screw, and hiring that out, especially like when I finally got to the place of hiring out my weekly broadcast, like, sitting pretty at that place. Cause the woman I work with, Kate Dramis, like she loves it. I don't love it. And so I like phone it in when I have to do copy, but she lives and breathes it. She like eats copy for breakfast, right? So hiring that out is actually doing your business a bigger service because you're putting the right people in the right seats versus you trying to do it out of like either guilt or obligation or like fear of quote unquote losing money. It actually just like amplifies your ability to make money because you free up all that brain space. Like when I finally hired out our weekly broadcast, I was like, oh my God, I do not have to think about writing emails ever again. Woo-hoo. That is crazy to me because I've been doing it for so long that now it's just like, it's almost like I get to like sweep out that side of my brain and like allow for more space for bigger opportunities to come in. Let's talk about like you and I talk a lot about this and I love what you're doing. And then I also want to talk about money.
Woohoo, cha-ching.
But speaking of money, so you and I talk a lot about on our heels, which I think I'm going to start calling like churchapy or something like that. Like it's a mix of church and therapy for me.
When you leave, we're going to go inactive then. So it can't be.
No, we need to go walk on Zoom together or something. Seriously. Like we need to, even if we're just like walking in place and pretending we're like, because you guys don't understand, we hike a mountain every other day. Yeah. Yes, we do. So we've got the insight and the butts to prove it. But you and I talk a lot about this impact versus income goals, right? Because you were kind of feeling a bit blocked around like just income goals. That wasn't really feeling like super light to you. Can we jam on that real quick?
Yeah. So
and what's yours? What's your impact goal? Because it's so cool.
It's so fun. It's so fun. So this year, we hit a financial goal that we set a long time ago that we never even thought was possible. And we actually hit it a year earlier than we thought. And it wasn't as, I don't know, I thought like fireworks were going to go off and I thought that I was going to feel fulfilled. And I thought that that was the thing that was going to be so cool. But it kind of left me in a little bit of, I call it a midlife crisis. Cause I'm like
existential crisis.
Yeah. Like now what? Yes, I love what I do, but I don't know. I was like in this struggle in my mind. And I talked to a guy named Mel Abraham. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I love Mel.
I love him.
So great.
And he was like, you got to switch your number. And I'm like, I don't know how to switch my number. What do you mean? I've been like, I'm a business owner. Like I look at numbers all the time, just like I check my health. I check my numbers. I check my family. Like that's just something that we have to deal with is numbers and money. And I'm like, how do I switch the number? And so we started thinking about it. And then there's been something in the back of my mind that I've kind of played with a little bit. And we put it into action this year. So what happened is when I see my students succeed, we all feel this like warm fuzzy, right? Like it feels so good. When Katie hit her almost $1 million month, I was on a high and I was like, woohoo, that is such a good feeling. And I'm like, but my students don't get to feel it. My students don't get to feel what I feel, like the mama bear, or when you watch your kid walk for the first time and like that pride comes through and you're like, this kid's going to be the next, I don't know, Flash or
Bill
whatever.
Gates.
Yep. And so anyways, I was like, how can I bring that feeling into my customers, into my students? And so what I decided to do was this September, I donated $100 in my student's name to something called Hope International. And Hope International gives microloans to families, usually the mom, for them to start a business. And they do it in countries that just don't have opportunities. And so like $100 will go to a sewing machine so that the mom can put food on her table, or 2 goats can allow enough money for their kids to go to school. And so instead of Jared and I being like, oh, look at the big check we just sent off to Hope International, our name on it, we said, we're going to do it in your names. So you can feel what we get to feel, knowing that you are helping another family and generations, because they're teaching their kids how to do this too. And when I announced that, Oh my gosh, the tears were flowing, the snot was flying. Like it was so,
That's such a mom thing.
Emotional. I know. Sorry, non-moms. Yeah. It was such an emotional moment for my students. And then 4 weeks later, we brought in Hope International and we got to see the impact that this was doing. And they told us that instead of the $100 being one person, they actually were able to stretch it out, and the $100 affected 5 families. So they were able to give 5 microloans out per $100. And so that was such a pivotal moment in our business. So we ended up giving just under $40,000 to Hope International. And it provided around 2,000 microloans. And I was like, that feels good. That feels good. So we've switched, instead of financial goal, to let's give 10,000 microloans away. Let's make that our goal of 10,000 microloans. Because if we get to 10,000 microloans, the finances will come as well. We'll hit our financial goals. But now we've got this new goal that all of our, like, everybody can get on board
Students
with. We're thinking about shirts that say, let's get to 10 that we can sell to everybody. And then the swag, a portion of the swag goes to Hope International. And so as a team, as a community, Because I Can family, we're all fighting to change 10,000 lives, change 10,000 families out there. And so that was a big pivotal moment in 2020 for us, for sure.
And it's such a, like, it's so rooted in service and generosity and impact. It's just like, it fuels your business growth in such an immeasurable way, because the vibes are so high from that. People get behind that kind of mission and they want to support it. It's just like the ripple effect you're having with that is like monumental. I don't even know if you realize, like, logically how huge it will be for the families that you serve, but then who they end up serving and their ripple effect by how they serve their communities. I mean, it's just like, it's a serious world dent. So I respect you so much for that. And then the last thing I wanted to jam on is money. And I think I had warned you I was going to bring this up, but I really feel like it's a powerful conversation to have if some women listening to this are trying to navigate this in their business and marriage, is being the breadwinner, like being the one who, you know, contributes, I don't want to say the most, but like at the highest level for the family, and how you navigate that in your marriage and the dynamics that go into that. Can we open up that convo? Are you sweating in all the wrong places about this? Or are we able to chat?
Because it's been 10 years. My husband and I, we've had so many conversations around this. It's been a hot topic in our marriage. And there's a reason why. It's because men's biggest insecurity is around providing for their family. Women's biggest insecurity is around their bodies and their weight. And so when I started matching my husband's salary, doubling my husband's salary, quadrupling it, all those things, we had to have those tough conversations. And we still have to have them. I think this weekend we were talking about it too. And about how some of the things that I say will trigger him, and some of the things that he says will trigger me. And we're trying to figure out those triggers, because at the end of the day, we know our goal. We are a family. We want to be married forever. We have, I have a grandma and grandpa. They just passed away. They were married for 74 years. They pinch each other's butts. Their pictures are in the hall. Right there. And I'm like, that's the life that I want. I want that life. And so what do we need to do to get there? And I think one of the things that has really helped in our marriage, and even in the business too, it's really benefited our students, is I bring Jared in and I let him shine, because he has so much to give, and he is so dang smart, and he's a physical therapist. So he'll get in and be like, ladies, does your neck hurt? Yeah, there's a reason why. It's because you're hunched over like this all day long, or you're looking at your phone all day long. These are some of the stretches that you need to do. And they're like, we love you, Jared.
And you're like, watch yourself. He's
he has gotten a naked photo on his phone before. He's like, oh, this one of your students. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Does she look good?
Yeah. Block.
He's like, I deleted it.
I don't know how she got his number. That's the fascinating thing.
Yeah, that's a bit creepy, to be honest.
She needs
it's a whole other level of invasive.
But anyways,
go
I have him needed because he is needed. And if I was just saying, nope, I got it, I don't need you, I think it would really create friction.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm like, hey, Jared, you're really smart at shipping. You got me out of some binds when I couldn't handle it. Would you come in and talk to the community about it? And he's like, yeah. And then last week, I'm trying to minimize my caffeine through Coke and pre-workout stuff. Anyway, I was getting massive headaches. And every Friday I go live into my community and I couldn't do it. And I've gone live for almost 4 years and I just wasn't feeling good. And so I said, Jared, can you do it? And he's like, yeah, I got it. I got it for you. And then there's been other times where I had a black eye. I had to go get, I live in Puerto Rico. So I get sunspots a little bit more and I had to have something removed and it gave me this big shiner. I didn't want to come on and do a Facebook Live with a shiner. And so he comes on, he feels needed because he totally is. And I see him light up with excitement. And then the other day we were running as a family and some guy stopped him and was like, you guys are the ones, you're the ones that teach e-commerce. And it was like, Jared, he was like this proud papa. And he was like,
that's cool.
Well, yes, we are. It was fun to see him shine with it. And so I think when a female owner goes and runs a business, if they can make their husband shine where he can totally shine, it's going to help build bonding and it's going to help with the hard thing that they have to tackle because it's a real thing. It's a very, very real thing for a man to not feel of worth if they're not providing for their family. Yeah. And it's Jared like does provide. Piece. Yeah, he does. He provides so much for a family. It might not be in a piece of paper with a guy's face on it, but he provides in our family, like our kids, they would not have clothes or clean clothes. We would be eating crappy food all the time because he has helped keep structure in the family. We have dinner every night as a family. Why? Because that's like his baby. He's like, this is our sacred time as a family. And so whatever the spouse's superpower is, let them lean into that. And that's the thing that's needed for them to be able to provide. It doesn't have to be money. They can provide in massive ways, other ways.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I think identifying that, like being conscious to what they really enjoy and where they shine and where they want to step up and then encouraging that. You know, when you and I were first talking about this, I noticed like my own trigger come up being like, oh, men wouldn't do this for us. And you know, but I also am very aware that, you know, if the marriage struggles, that bleeds into your family, that bleeds into your business. It affects your personal, like it affects every element of your life. And if you want to have cohesiveness and ease and enjoyment and connection, it really is about acknowledging like, where can I empower him to play a role in this mission or in our family? Or, you know, where can I help him feel seen, heard, and acknowledged and appreciated? So that there isn't that like gender roles battle that I think probably a lot of women have to navigate as they really start to hit their stride. And if their husband isn't an entrepreneur, or if he is and yet hasn't, you know, hit a certain level like she has yet, I can only imagine the hiccups that or the conversations that need to be had in order to, and like really staying present to it and not like making it mean something about them, about you, about your marriage, just like coming to it from a place of compassion and like wanting to love them through that so that you can find that way that works for both of you that doesn't have people feeling triggered or overlooked or unsupported or unappreciated.
Yeah, and it goes to both ways. Like when the husband's like on fire and the woman can feel very not needed. It goes both ways. And so I think in a marriage, you have to say, how do I make my spouse a priority? So here's another example. I just qualified for an award that I'm pretty excited about.
Yes.
And on it, they said that I had to put my name, like what's the name that you want on there? And I debated on whether to put just my name alone, my name, my husband's name, or my entire family. And I thought about it for a while, and they were like, Alison, just put your name. We need more female, strong, own female businesses out there. And you're such a great example. Just put your name on there. And I didn't feel good about it because Jared has been with me my whole journey. And whether he was, moving, I don't know. There's just so much,
Picking Cheetos.
So Picking Cheerios from the car track.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Cheetos is on my mind because I'm like, Cheetos.
Or helping me sign contracts or working with lawyers. Like, he's been so much a part of this. He's just not the front and center line. And then my kids, they've all played a role in helping me to get my goal. Every single one of them. Like, my boys outside right now are doing homeschool. I didn't have to get them started. They just know what to do because that's their job. And so on that plaque, I decided to write the Prince family because we all contributed to get this award. It just wasn't me. And so we've talked about that a lot, about how if the roles were reversed, like would a man just put his name on it or would he put the family name on it? And so that was a topic, and
guaranteed like 80% of dudes would put their name on it. Unless their wives are like, you best be putting our whole family on there.
But I thought it was such a great honor and such a great tribute to my family and what they've done. Where I'm working late or I'm on a business trip or they've forgiven me for, I don't know, just some of the things that I may forget because I've got business on my mind or something. Right. And I'm like, look, we all did this together. This is our accomplishment. We're going to celebrate together. And so when we actually get the plaque, I don't even know what I'm going to do with it.
In your new house.
Yeah.
Just center around what you design around.
Yep.
I love that concept because I actually heard that from my friend Megan Walker. She told me about, so this was just to tell this story. I was at a mastermind dinner with people like Pete Vargas, Amy Porterfield, John Lee Dumas, Kay Erickson, who's John's life and business partner. And then myself and Josh, Ray Edwards, Megan Walker, Mark Wade, like there was a ton of us there. And it came to my time to share like something that was tripping me up. And I was like, I feel so guilty about work. And I just like broke down into tears at the dinner. Like just probably the exact opposite of how I wanted to show up. And Megan Walker, because I was explaining like my nanny at the time said to me, I just hope that when you're with your son, you're present. And I was like, do you think I would be? Like, I was so upset about it. I was so upset. And she just made me feel terrible, which is ridiculous because she was like she was there to help. It's just crazy. Anyway, so I went into this mastermind dinner and I broke down in tears and I was like, I feel so guilty. Like, but I love building this. Like, I love doing something that matters to me. And I wouldn't be as good of a mom if I wasn't chasing something that mattered to me and showing my son what it looks like to go after your dreams or what a strong woman looks like, like I really want to be that example. And Megan Walker said to me, I need to tell you about the concept of the family business because she is just a powerhouse. Like, you would love her. And she's got like 3 businesses. And she helps like naturopaths and clinicians build essentially their practices, and take them online and whatnot. And she was saying like, we have the family business because she has 3 girls and she's like, everyone has their role. And so when I'm out speaking or when I'm launching or when I'm working with clients, like that's my job in the family business, but it's Naya's job to do homeschooling or to play or to go do her art. And it's Greg's job, which is her hubby, to do this and this. And everyone has their role so that everyone feels like contributing. And she said, said, right now, Kai's job is to play. Kai's job is to play and have fun, go to daycare or hang with his nanny or whatever. Like his job is to be a kid and to live his best life. And your job is to build this. And Josh's job is blah, blah, blah. You know, it was just like such a cohesive way of looking at it. And it just like breathed so much permission into me. And I just always love sharing that when other moms are trying to navigate that and realize that like it is a family effort, even if sometimes we feel alone in it. It is such a family effort when you look at it that way.
Totally. I've taken my kids traveling with me before on business trips because I'm going to immerse them as much as they can into the business world. And their job is to make sure that I have all my stuff. Like when, I love that. Because you know, when you speak on stage, you become micro famous for a second. You're pulled everywhere. And like, it's just, I don't know. It's just a little bit intense. And their job is to make sure, like, where's mom's phone? Where's her purse? Does she need to go to the bathroom? And then we have a sign. We have a sign where if I drop a pin, that means get me out of this conversation, because I love people to death. I do. But sometimes they suck the soul.
The energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't do that. And so if I drop a pin, they'll say, Mom, we've got an appointment. We got to go. And I'm like,
it's your eject button.
And so they help protect me because they know I'm an introvert and I know I have to preserve my energy. Yeah. And so like when we go to these things, we have like this game plan. Okay, if mom's speaking, this is what we need to do so that she has energy, she can pee, she can eat, and she can get out of conversations that are just a little bit awkward. Yeah. And like I said, I don't ever want to, I'm not rude to people or anything like that. There's just, sometimes you just get in a weird situation and you need to get out. And so drop a 100%. Pen and my kids will come get you.
I love that. I'm going to use that with Bridge.
She is so good at it. She is so good at it.
Girl, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love you. I love this conversation. And I'm so happy to have finally hit record with you. I feel like this has been months in the making. So thank you for being here. Where can people connect with you and find out more?
So podcast, Because I Can Life over there. And then Instagram, Alison J. Prince. And then YouTube, the website, all the things. They're out there.
And I'll put that all in the show notes, faux show. Please, guys, if you are vibing with this, or if you had at least one aha throughout this, snap a pic of this episode right now, post it to your IG stories, tag Alison. That was the coolest face that you just did.
I'm surprised you didn't do your face. That's my go-to.
That was great. People listening to the audio are like, what are these chicks talking about? But snap a pic of this episode, post it to your IG stories, tag Alison at Alison J. Prince, tag me at the Millionaire Girls Club, and let us know what was one piece of this conversation that vibed with you or opened up an insight for you or an aha. We would love to hear it so we can continue to create what resonates with you. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.
Wait. Can I say Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I know it's your exit, but I'm going to say one more thing. Yeah. Tag me, because what you're creating, Jill, moms, women that create business need each other. And we need good, solid people who are going to change the world. We have to have a community of women. And the more we know, and the more I feel like you are building this tribe of women who are like, let's support each other. Let's help each other. But if you're listening and you don't let me know that you're out there, I'm not gonna be able to support you. So come over, say hi on direct message. And Jill, thank you for putting this community together. You're awesome.
Thank you for being a part of it. Can I close it out now?
Yeah, I'm done.
You're the best. I love you so much. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show either on iTunes or YouTube or both, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.